Now, the victims of rape and sexual abuse have been reflecting on the decisions in the trial of Patrick O'Brien last week, who was first granted bail pending an appeal for sexually abusing his daughter, but days later that bail was revoked following huge public criticism.
Three sisters who suffered years of sexual abuse at the hands of their father have said that lawyers, judges and politicians need to be educated about the impact of abuse on victims, and they are urging other abuse victims not to be deterred by last week's events, to open up about their suffering. Sisters Joyce, June and Paula Kavanagh join us this morning. Ladies, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Joyce is nearest me, June in the middle and Paul at the end, just for people at home.
Well done.
Joyce, I'm going to come to you first, and I in no way want to diminish the horrific abuse that the three of you suffered, but I know that all of you want to focus on how those in a position of authority treat people like yourselves and deal with you. So I want, if possible, for you to tell us briefly, if you can, what happened to you and June and Paula, what your father did to you all.
Well, we come from a large family of 10 and we lived in Ballyfermot. It was a really disadvantaged area and everybody lived in poverty, and we were seen as like well off because we had a grocery shop. My father sexually abused all of the girls in the family, just 4 girls, and he battered and mentally and physically abused the boys, so there was no escape, and that went on through our life. That was our norm. No one ever questioned it. It was the culture. The culture was always silence. And then it was also a culture where your children were your property. You know, so we didn't ask. We were blindly obedient, every one of us. Never questioned anything.
From a very, very young age, 4 and 5, you were being routinely raped on a daily basis by your father, up until the age that he became aware you could probably get pregnant, and then he stopped. So at which stage in your lives did you decide to speak out about this? I don't know who wants to take this, June or Paula or Joyce, whoever.
Go for it. It was a grand niece in the family that my father had also abused, attempted suicide several times, and her mother finally got it out of her that my father abused her. And the whole family came together, decided to spill the beans. They didn't want anything really. They didn't want anything done about it. It's the culture that we grew up in, the era we grew up. They wanted it brought to attention and him get help, but they didn't want anything, you know, no police involved or anything like that, because this was family shame. So anyway, that's how it all came out, and my mother came over and was horrified when she got the news and said to me, well, Jesus, he never went near any of my children, did he? He didn't touch any of yours. And I said, he did. And that was how it all came out.
And she didn't know what he was doing to you on a daily basis.
This is really an important message here about the knowing. And we can't emphasise enough. We don't want to, like, we've told the truth about everything that has ever happened to us. We're upfront. My mother has since died. We're not protecting her. We're not in denial. It hurts because dealing with my mother's role in this abuse was harder than the abuse itself. But we have dealt with it to the best of our ability. And we believed that she was as much a victim as we were. She was groomed. He selected her very carefully. And she would have been years upon years of being told that she's no good, she can't think for herself. She believed it like we did, you know, thinking that you're stupid and she's isolated. She was as much a victim as we were, and I think it's really important message to get out there that we can't speak for all mothers, of course, and there would be exceptions to the rule, but in general they are to be considered victims.
But when she said to you, he didn't do that to any of mine, did you believe that she had no idea?
Yes, no, at the time I had a memory that I believed my mother absolutely knew. There was nobody could have told me different.
Well, you'd know from the look on her face when she was told.
Oh, but that wouldn't tell you anything, because she looked completely shocked, and if I didn't know different, I would have absolutely believed straight away she didn't know a thing. But I had a childhood memory. I remembered her witnessing, coming into a room and witnessing my father getting me ready to abuse me, and I felt like there's no way in this earth she couldn't know. She's a grown woman, she know. But you see, there are levels of knowing that go on in a house where abuse takes place. There are unwritten rules, there are things that nobody ever tells you, but you know.
But did you know about each other?
No.
In the same way. We were shocked when we found about each other.
We'll swear no, but actually when we were writing our book, we were saying, when he clicked, we'd say, oh
You
God, I hope he
froze.
doesn't want me.
Now, just talk about the clicking. He literally physically would click his fingers.
Yeah,
and that was him summoning one of you to prepare yourselves.
It could be, or it could be get me a cup of tea or change the station.
My father,
So
my
click
father was
what I
famous
did.
for, you could be out on the road, up the top of the road, playing, skipping, and he'd come out and call you and say, get in the house, make me a cup of tea. Or get in the house and he'd tell you to go upstairs and you were going to be abused. You never knew what he was going to call you for, but you just didn't want to be, you didn't want to acknowledge that because you knew it could be and it might not be.
So it sounds too simple to say she did or she didn't know. You wouldn't be doing a service or being honest if you said.
It's a complex.
It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
complicated.
Paula, can I ask you about one? All of it is shocking. It's horrific to read all of it. And this is important because this is about how authorities respond to situations. It was the situation where you were so horrifically raped and abused that you needed hospital attention, and those in hospital didn't help you.
No. I was actually going away. And
How old were you?
I think I was about 10 or 11. And I was actually getting to go away for a whole week. You've no idea what that felt like, to know that you were going to escape this abuse for a week. And because I was going away, he viciously raped me to make sure I wouldn't forget him while I was gone. And when he raped me that bad that I actually got a prolapsed womb. I didn't know what it was. All I knew was there was something hanging down there. I didn't know what it was. So I called my mother in. This is where the dilemma of did she know, did she not know comes in. And she called my father in, because she didn't know what was going on, and he insisted on bringing me down to the hospital the next morning before I went away. And the threat was, if the doctor knows anything, you're not going away. I wanted to go away.
So say nothing.
But I know for a fact, when I was lying on that bed, I know that doctor knew. And the questions he kept asking me was, have you got a boyfriend? I didn't even know what a boyfriend was. Did anybody go near you? Of course they didn't. I wasn't going to say yeah. Plus, when I was lying on the cubicle, my father was right outside the curtain, hearing everything, and he had told me to tell the doctor I was playing with a stick, and I did it to myself. And when the doctor walked out, my father had a conversation with him and told him, as she's experimenting at that age, she must have been playing with a stick. And the doctor said yeah, and
No,
let me
playing
go.
with the stick is going to give you a prolapsed womb.
Yeah, exactly. There's no way he couldn't have known. And there was many things like that as we went along that happened.
And that's the big thing you want to talk about today, girls, isn't it? How
Yeah.
people approach the issue and how the authorities deal with it.
We're very concerned that even in this day and age, very little seems to have changed. Although now you could go to the hospital with a bruise and you'll probably be reported. You wonder, is it gone from one extreme to another? But at the same time, when we were going through the whole court system, the only way we knew my dad was in court was we read it in the newspaper. No one informed us. And then on the day of the hearing, we were saying, oh, because there's too many of you, they might not let you in courtroom. Like we were
totally
many of you.
excluded.
too many of you, yeah.
And you're
Three
the
of us.
victims.
Yeah. And it was
had
about
nothing
us.
to do with us. Yeah, it was like it had nothing to do with us. We were surplus requirements now. We made the statement, so they had all they needed from us. So there was no need for us to be there.
It's a very
When you
difficult...
heard Judge Carney apologising for being insensitive last weekend, did that strike a chord? Did you think, well, about bloody time? Or did it make you think, well, hang on a second, are these people so desensitised by what they're seeing on a daily basis that they actually don't get it?
They need education. It's ignorance. They clearly don't understand what they're dealing with. They're looking at somebody who has no visible scars in front of them, may have appeared to have moved on, got married, had children, and they think that represents
Okay.
You know.
Sorry, there's one thing I think is really important. You know, when we were looking at a couple of programmes, we were talking about when it comes to sentencing, the proportionality comes in. So this sentence should match the crime.
One of you
If
made a very
understood
good
it-
comment. I don't know which one of you was saying that you made the comment that just because and the age of the perpetrator, when it comes before the court, shouldn't matter. The message you're sending out is that you've missed the bullet on your crime by virtue of your age.
Yes, that was me. I was just saying that we can't be seen to be sending a message out to people if they get to a certain age or an illness that they believe, I'm safe.
You still did what you did.
Yeah, because you have to remember that the child is still there. That adult that's standing in front of you is actually speaking on behalf of a child that's now probably irreparably damaged. Because although we have done great healing work, there's a part of us that will never be okay
You carry
as
those
a
scars
result
for
of
life.
this.
Now,
Like,
your father was, as the result of your efforts, your father did go to jail.
Yeah.
And passed away, I think, a year after being released from jail. Your experience of going to the police and going through the courts, was that something that you found positive? And were people there to support you, or was it the opposite?
It was horrific, I think. The whole process of making your statement, you've no idea how difficult it was.
And that's what has to change.
Just to make the statement was really
it wasn't
difficult.
until the actual day we were sitting in court that we realised people were on our side, because up to then they didn't give you any information.
So people need specialist training to be there to support you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, very quickly before we go, because it's the nature of news and the news cycle. It was Fiona Doyle last week, and everybody was interested in and outraged. Now, sadly, because of the Garda shooting over the weekend, that's the news story. So Fiona Doyle will recede into the background. This won't come up again until somebody else has to go through what you have to go through.
Well, this is the challenge we'd like to put out to the media.
So the message you need to get out now, now's your chance. Go for it.
Absolutely.
It's really important that for survivors out there, for current victims and for survivors, that the media cover this, and they cover it on an ongoing basis. And you have people on your programme giving hints and tips of what to do while you're waiting to get into the Rape Crisis Centre, while you're on a waiting list. And people talking about it, the more you talk about it, the more it'll go away. And the only way it can survive is if people stay secret and don't tell anybody about it.
We need to normalise these conversations and challenge the media to cover it, even when it's not headline news.
Okay. Well, do you know what? Maybe Justice Carney was watching this morning, or somebody will tell him about the three of you. Maybe he'll say, do you know what? It might be a good idea if I sat down with the three of you and had a cup of coffee and got an insight.
And
There's a thought.
maybe pigs will fly.
No, but we would love it.
It would be fantastic.
No, but because of people like yourselves, change is taking place. Slowly it is happening, and it is down to people like you being brave enough to speak out. So thank you on behalf of women everywhere in Ireland and abuse victims everywhere. Thank you very much, girls.
Thank you.
Okay, we will take a break now. We'll see you back here in a few minutes.